Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today marks the release of update 1.0.2, and also that marks the end of the reign of the Object 268 version 4 as being probably the most overpowered tier 10 vehicle that I can remember. I think two other tanks have come close. That would have been the original T110E4, which only lasted for one patch. It was kind of like the same as a T110E3 but just had a turret, and it used to have 850 alpha. Then after that, probably the WTLV 100 with the original 6-shot Jagdtiger magazine, that dealing 560 damage every 2 seconds. And it was able to just clip every single vehicle in the game. It was absolutely ludicrous. But I really hold the Object 268 version 4 at least at that level, if not more so. And in fact, it was 126 days before finally we're going to see this tank nerfed, or we have seen this tank nerfed in the new update. Now you're seeing pre-nerf footage from the 1.0.1 version of the game, and so please take that into account when you're checking out this vehicle. But I did play a game in this tank on the new version, and I still picked up a Top Gun and did 4,000 damage, although I have to admit it was a nice scenario for the vehicle. And I also had a game before that where I really didn't have an exceptional game. And the thing is that I feel that with the nerf state of this tank, you're going to actually have to try a lot harder. And for good, right? I played this tank a lot in the last week because I wanted to be able to get the personal reserves you get for the Top of the Tree event that's on the European server. I.e., if you win 50 games in the Top of the Tree tank, then you get 20 hours of 300% extra crew experience and 20 hours of 100% extra regular experience. They're absolutely fantastic. If you do have the tier 10 vehicles and you have a little bit of discipline, I definitely recommend going for it. Now, the 268 version 4 has been significantly nerfed in this latest patch. Just to give you a rundown of what exactly has happened to this tank, we're talking about it losing lots of aim time. The aim time nerf is huge. It's going from 2 seconds to 2.5 seconds, so you're not going to be able to snap shots like in on that Oh-Ho. Now, its ability to ammo rack hasn't been nerfed, so you're still going to be able to pull off nasty shots on those derpy Japanese tanks, right? The mobility has been really hit hard. We're talking about the engine power going from 1,500 down to 1,350. That's a big old slug to lose, 10% to be exact. Its hit points down from 2,100 down to 2,000. Its reverse speed, it can no longer go backwards faster than some heavy tanks can go forwards, as it's being nerfed from 22 down to 18, and its top speed forwards down from 55 to 50, its traverse speed nerfed, its bloom when it's turning the tank nerfed. Just everything has been tuned down, I'd say about 10% on this tank, and that it was completely necessary. And that is because this vehicle has had an average win ratio over the last 120 days of 57%. At one point when I was tryharding in this tank, over 100 games, I was able to win 76% of my rounds. Now, of course, some people might be saying, well, it's a bit of a small numbers problem, but 100 games is where you really start to feel that it's more than a coincidence, right? To win 76% solo at tier 10 is just outrageous. And that must be why the 50% global win ratio is there, because if I'm able to go from kind of like 65 up to 75, and somebody who usually wins 45% of their games is able to go up to 50% of their games purely because they're playing a vehicle which requires, well, not so much. I wouldn't say that it's a low skill cap tank because it's fast and it's still got some kind of skill a little bit with the armor, at least the high-end stuff with, for example, knowing that you can't ever get shot with armor-piercing rounds in the lower plate, and knowing that this plate is bad when they're aiming up into it with premium rounds, and that heat can go through the upper part here. I'm not going to focus on that. What I'm trying to say is that just the global win ratio of this vehicle, it was the highest of any tier 10 tank. Just absolutely outrageous. The fact that even Muppets were able to completely dominate in this tank. And I'm not saying that they're... Well, actually, I am saying that Muppets shouldn't be able to dominate in a tier 10 tank without improving their skill or playing well in a tank. Now, I have no problem with some people being exceptional in a tank. But when the whole server seems to be exceptional in a tank, then that's obviously clearly where a problem would be arising. Now, to add to these facts, Because this tank was so overpowered, it became the second most popular tier 10 vehicle, only slightly behind the IS-7, and it was by far the most popular tier 10 tank destroyer, with 50% more games played in this than the next most popular tier 10 tank destroyer. To put it into perspective, for every time the WZ-113, the tier 10 Chinese tank destroyer was played, this vehicle was played pretty much 50 times. It was 50 times more popular than another tier 10 tank destroyer. It had the highest damage of any tier 10 vehicle that was not a reward tank, but those are played by Clan Wars players, and so the statistics are skewed. Has the highest kills per battle, the highest damage per battle, the list goes on. So I question a couple of things here, because I don't want this to just be a rant where I'm discussing statistics about the vehicle and saying that it was overpowered. I talked about that back in April. I want to question why it has taken 120 days for this vehicle to be tuned down. You know what, I was thinking it was going to take longer. I honestly thought that it would take longer than the 4 months that it has, because something like the T110E5, for example, lasted for a good while as being the go-to tank that a lot of people were playing. Now, I think one of the problems with this vehicle was that on the test server, when I say, I'm not going to say because of this tank, I think the test servers, at least for me recently, have become less and less of a good opportunity to truly test out the tanks. Because on a test server, everybody plays the same vehicle, everybody's firing premium rounds, and the thing about this tank is that while its armor was fairly good against premium rounds, it's really how good it is against standard rounds that makes the difference in the vehicle. This thing, unless you fire gold at it, even at the weak point on top of the tank, and I should mention that has been nerfed as well in this current patch, it was just able to shrug off everything. I've never been so comfortable in a tank to just sit out in front of any vehicle that isn't firing high explosive rounds at me, or is some kind of a tier 10 tank destroyer firing premium rounds. Take, for example, that moment when we were sitting in front of the Stridsvagn 103B on the southern part of this map. I was spotting with my fairly okay view range, with good crew skills, and with coated optics you can manage to spot. You can get around like a medium tank. It was ludicrous. But again, I digress. I'm going into how frustrated I was with the game in the last few months that this thing was in it, frankly. And I know I added to the problem a little bit by playing it, but if I want to get personal reserves, whatever. But I want to focus on the fact that I don't think that the current test server is really being a good bed for wargaming to get meaningful stats on before they release the tank to the general population. And I think that they should make changes on the test server to the extent of maybe just limiting the amount of premium rounds that can be fired so that we can get maybe some more realistic ideas of what the vehicle would be capable of, or maybe limiting the amount of games that you can play in the new flavor of the month tank, a lot like they did on the sandbox test server one time, so that we get more varied vehicles on the test server so we can develop more well-rounded opinions of them, and also hopefully wargaming can get more meaningful statistics. And also I would question as to why what wargaming's kind of baseline decision making is for when they decide that a vehicle is performing too well or too bad. Pretty much all of the other community contributors decided, everybody back in April, once they managed to play it for about a month, they knew this thing was stupid, it was destroying Clan Wars. Why did it take so long for wargaming to form the same opinion as the players? Something that was very concerning for me, that originally they thought that this vehicle was okay, and in fact, if anything, it was going to get buffed. I remember that Wargaming said in one of their original Q&As. Thank goodness that didn't happen, and they've come to reason. And there's another thing that I want to highlight, is that now that it's been nerfed, it does feel as if you spent a long time grinding towards this tank and you weren't one of the players like me who originally had the Object 263 and were given this vehicle as a replacement, that you probably feel cheated now, right? Have you spent gold on converting experience to be able to rush towards the vehicle? Have you spent hours, or did you maybe buy some premium time or some credits to be able to help you to get there? Have you feel like you've wasted some personal reserve experience boosters to be able to progress towards the vehicle as well? Have you spent hours suffering in tier 8 matchmaking, playing your premium tanks to be able to get the credits to be able to afford to buy one? Because there's 6 million credits, right? And even if you were very active, that's still quite a short period to have played the game to be able to get your hands on the tank while it was overpowered in 120 days. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not going as far as to suggest that Wargaming purposefully put this tank into the game in an overpowered state so that people would rush to be able to get it. When you think about it, if they were going to do that with any vehicle, they would probably do it with something like a Progetto 65 instead of a tank that, frankly, a lot of people already had or were close to getting because it was a replacement tank for the 263. But I would question the three aspects that I touched on this video. Number one, Wargaming, how are you balancing tanks? And secondly, why was your opinion so skewed about this vehicle for the first couple of months of its release? And I think this point is actually quite dangerous because if Wargaming were originally saying it's fine or it's going to get better, then that kind of gives hope to all of the people who were grinding it. If Wargaming had established it quickly, look, it's overperforming, it's likely that we're going to change the statistics of this vehicle, then that would have encouraged less players to be able to maybe invest their time in it at that point. And I presume there'll be less disappointed players on the European server who invested a lot of time at getting to this vehicle when it was top of the tree last month. And thirdly, just to reiterate about the test server, I just don't think it's obviously very effective at the moment if vehicles like this are coming out from it. But maybe I'm ignorant to even think that the public test server influences the statistics of the tank, and maybe everything is done behind closed doors on the super test. And if you thought that this was an amazing and exceptional game for the Object 268 version 4, well, you're going to be a little bit surprised to hear that about 20% of players have had games that were as good or better than this in the last couple of weeks. Because I nail a second class mastery badge to go with my Dimitri's medal for destroying 3 enemy self-propelled guns, a high caliber and a top gun for those 7 kills. And the sad thing is that when this happened, I wasn't excited. It didn't really mean anything because I just know how crazy OP this vehicle is, that it just didn't feel like it was a challenge, and there's no reward in having a great game because you were playing an overpowered vehicle. And it's for that reason that I will say good riddance to bad rubbish. And I'm really looking forward to taking some of my other tier 10 tank destroyers out onto the battlefield in this patch where I don't feel like I'm screwing my team over by the fact that it's likely that the enemy tier 10 tank destroyer is going to be a 268 version 4. But anyway, that's it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you didn't, make sure you give it a thumbs down and let me know in the comments whether you think that I'm being a little bit too hard on the Object 268 version 4, or do you think that I'm being a little bit too soft on Wargaming and that they should have sorted the issue out a little bit faster. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.